DTFF.
Again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
Welcome back to DTFF, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Happy Tuesday. We are back. We're better than ever. In the thick of the off season. I love it. Lots of fun stuff happening right now. A lot of rookie drafts going on for people. I have a startup draft that we'll be talking about in a little bit here. Lots of great things going on. We got a great episode tonight. We are doing a little Who'd You Rather Dynasty edition. So talking players, where they are in the startup Dynasty ADP Superflex rankings, taking guys that are similar in ADP, and we'll discuss who'd you rather have and why. It's that simple. But it's going to be great
it's
conversation.
Never really that simple, though. There's always an edge to it. And
there is. And that beautiful voice you just heard is my co-host, Jake. How are you doing this evening?
Well, so much better now that you called my voice beautiful. I'm doing great, though. We're in the rear view of a couple of my Dynasty rookie drafts, so I feel primed and ready for this because it was Trey to Palooza, and I had to make some of these tough evaluations on these guys as I was looking for who to trade for. So I'm psyched for that. I'm psyched. We were just talking before we hopped on. We're already prepping for next year's real NFL draft that's happening in Green Bay, close to home. So, I don't want to all of a sudden just wipe away this wonderful draft we just got done with.
No, of course not.
But it's hard not to turn your attention to the future as well.
Exactly.
And by the way, I want to jump into this because I don't know. I'm having second thoughts about this beer that I got for the podcast. Can we talk about the beer?
Yeah, let's. I haven't broken into it yet because I was having a pre-podcast beer, but it looks good. I'm not going to lie. When you brought it over, I'm like, you know what? This sounds good. I like it.
It's the can art. I think it's the can art that got me. Bell's. We also love some Bell's Oberon. That's like a classic summer beer around these parts. But I got the
right here. This guy you're talking about.
Oh my God! Look at that. Your Bell's and out tonight. Got your bells on. I don't know, something else dumb. Lager for the Lakes is just an American lager from Bell's. I don't know. I think I got fooled by the can art, but we'll see. I'm normally not just big on like regular ass lagers, Now, as you chug that wonderful Oberon.
You're saying you don't like beer flavored beer.
I mean, maybe.
Because that's what a lager is. It's just a beer flavored beer.
It's like eating bread flavored bread, Actually, that's kind of nice. That's actually not bad. I like this. Okay, I take it back. I kind of like this. This is nice.
There's like a little bit of a sweetness to it that I wasn't expecting.
Tinge.
Yeah, I wonder what.
A little sweetness, a little crisp.
Yeah, I wonder what grains they use for this. I wonder if they put like a little honey malt in there or something, just something to give it a little bit of sweetness. It doesn't actually add honey flavor, but it does add just like a little bit of a sweetness to it. So I wonder if they did something like that to give it that little flavor.
Maybe. I don't know. It's 4.8. That's my style these days. I also got this because I was excited about it finally turning warm. And then today was like a soggy diaper out in Wisconsin. So,
but it's still warm.
More aspirational. Yeah, it's fine. It was fine. Anyways, all right. I'm back on the train. I'm sorry, Bells, for ever thinking wrong.
It's a fine beer. It's a lager. It's your typical light lager. Think your Miller Lights, your Busch Lights, your any light beer, your Coors Light. It's in that same vein.
All right.
It's in that same vein. It's an American lager.
It's, I don't know if I'm having to decide next time between this and hams. I might go hams still.
Well, I know you might because you love hams.
Yeah. You know what else I love? I love when we have drunk trades that we get to talk about in this show. But this week, I don't really get to have that love because we don't have an outside drunk trade, I should say. We don't have a submission from the outside world.
And the trade, we'll talk trade here. Not an official drunk trade. So people, please submit your drunk trades at Drinking Fantasy, at Jake Trowbridge, at FF Dusty Dog, any one of those handles. We will get your drunk trade on the show. 'Tis the season for trading with your rookie drafts, startups, you name it. Pardon me. Any type of off-season activity you've got going on. So give us those trades because we love talking about them. But in lieu of that, I was telling Jake right before, I'm like, we can substitute. It's not an official drunk trade, but we will say this was an under the influence trade. There was some electric cabbage involved at the time.
Okay. I dig it.
So this is a league that I'm in where we decided to redraft because we made a switch from MFL to Sleeper. Sleeper doesn't do what we want to do, so we're just kind of redrafting the league. Expanded it to a 14 teamer from a 12 team. It's lots of fun. So we're in the throes of the startup draft here. So my pick was on the clock. It was the 407. Okay. I mistakenly read this trade the wrong way. I thought it was going the other way around, and I was going to receive the 407.
Oh no!
So I ended up giving up the 407.
Okay.
And Jake, just feel free to just lambaste me on this one if it's real bad.
Don't worry.
Yeah, just tell me.
I will. But I need to know what the final.
So I gave up the 407, and I got a 25 first, a 25 second, and a 25 fourth. Just say it.
This was terrible.
Just say it.
This is
just say
god
it.
Awful. So
I know. I immediately clicked the accept button because I thought it was like, oh, I get an extra pick in the fourth round and I'm giving up future picks. I was like, fuck yeah. I'm like, because there was two guys that I was aiming for, Devonte Smith and Nico Collins in the fourth round. I was like, oh, I get to double up on wide receivers that I really like. I'm like, fuck yeah. That's why I hit the accept button. And then it was about 30 seconds later. I was like, oh, fuck. That was the wrong way. I was like, oh no. Instant regrets, all the regrets. And I did not even try to reach out to the owner or the other GM and was like, hey, I did this wrong. My mistake. Can we reverse this? Like, I was just like, I'm going to own up to this. Just chalk it up as a mistake. Yeah. It's a learning mistake for me here. And I reached out to the
as way of just like actually reading the trades before you.
Yeah. And I did because this fantasy manager reached out for my 5th round pick and tried to offer me some garbage 26 round picks. And I was like, no, I'm going to pass. I know. I said, I'm going to pass. And I'm like, by the way, I gave him the little backstory. He's like, oh man. He's like, I couldn't even tell. He's like, sorry. I was like, man, not your fault, man. It was all me.
Lesson
learned.
I was going to ask who the players were that were going around that area. Cause whenever it's a 14 teamer, I don't have the easy math skills to be like, all right, that's probably who's available. So the fact that both Devonte Smith and Nico were available. Now if we just break it down that way and we say, okay, you got a future first, a future second, and a future fourth for any one of those guys individually. I don't know that I would have lambasted it quite as hard. It's still not great. It's still not great for me, especially because now that is probably going to be a late first and a late second and a late fourth because you just helped this guy get one of those studs on his team. But it's not as bad as I initially thought. Not great, though.
No, I was not happy about it at all. Hopefully I can recover here and make a couple trades to get some picks back here in kind of these late single-digit rounds to bolster my roster back up for missing out. But lesson learned. One bad trade does not mean your league is over and your team is over with. It just means you got to get back on the horse and make other trades to make up for it. So
goddamn right.
That is my plan.
Better trades now. You know why? Because your other league mates are going to look at you and go, oh, here's a fool. I'm going to send out whatever. But you can use that to your advantage. You can send a trade to them that makes them still think that they are taking advantage of you as the fool when they're not, when they're actually not. So it's all about the subterfuge.
That's right. So, well, Jake, did that suffice enough for a replacement drunk trade for this week?
Impeccable. I applaud you for that.
And you were way nicer about that Yeah, you were way nicer about that than I expected. So thank you for that, because even I know that's terrible.
Look, we needed the content. I don't want to scare you off of submitting these in the future when we're in need of
Oh,
them.
it won't. Believe me, it won't.
Well, hey, we can start to turn your attention, and who knows, maybe you can start making some trades in that same league for some of these other folks that we're going to be talking about here. You set up quite the list. And for this show, I came to the show sheet after you'd send it up. And I wasn't sure if we were going to look at it from just a one-year perspective or a dynasty perspective. I'm glad we're doing the dynasty perspective on this. I think that this makes for some very interesting shit. It's a long off season yet.
Yeah.
And I think a lot is going to change. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we can do another one of these maybe as the regular season gets closer, and we can do more of a redraft once redraft ADP starts coming out here. So we can revisit this later in the off season. But yeah, I think for now, for dynasty, especially, this is the season everyone's starting to do their dynasty startups. Everyone's got that itch. So like, I feel like this is the perfect time to talk about some of these values.
Hell yeah. Well, what do you say? Let's get into it. I brought slides, Dustin. I'm so excited. Brought slides for us. I don't know why we don't have slides on this show. Normally it's just because of my laziness and ineptitude about it. But is there any? I mean, I'm comfortable even just rolling down this list from start to finish. But is there one that you want to focus on out of the gate here?
Well, I don't think we have to go like straight down the list. I feel like we can jump around. But I do want us to start off with the first one on the list, because I feel like this one is going to be very interesting to discuss. And yeah, as you can see, for those of you watching us here, it's CJ Stroud or Jalen Herz. So currently, CJ Stroud going third overall, the third quarterback off the board, and Jalen Herz going 4 as the QB4. Now, the reason I found this interesting is that Jalen Herz, we've seen great fantasy production out of him for a couple years, like 2.5 years roughly now. Where CJ Stroud, rookie last year, came out of nowhere. Like, nobody was expecting the type of season that we had out of him. But the fact that he's already in Dynasty ranked higher than Jalen Herz, to me, I was very surprised by that. What are your thoughts, and who would you rather have?
I was surprised by this as well. And I start to get a little concerned whenever a rookie like this jumps up that quickly that doesn't also back up their stats with a rushing floor. And I mean, it's the way of the league. It's certainly the way of fantasy these days. Like, if you don't have a comfortable rushing floor, I'm already skeptical about putting you up into the top 5 quarterbacks for Dynasty. And I would argue that's what we're looking at with CJ Stroud right now. So CJ Stroud, I was just looking up his rushing attempts, 39 rushing attempts, 167 yards. And I think that's about what we should expect. His deal is not going to be Jalen Hurts in the rushing department. It's not even going to be Patrick Mahomes in the rushing department, right? We talk about guys on here who they're not maybe a dual threat the way that Jalen Hurts is, but they've got the scoot to them, we like to say. And, that's not going to be CJ Stroud. Now, obviously, he gets added Stephon Diggs for the short term. Stephon Diggs going into the twilight of his career here.
Got him for at least 1 year here.
Yeah. So for redraft, great. I can get on board with CJ Stroud somewhat high. Still not taking him above Jalen Hurts in redraft even. But when you look at Jalen Hurts, you brought it up. It's really been 3 years now that we have for Jalen Hurts. So he was the QB9, the QB3, and then most recently the QB2. And I think he should have proven that he has some staying power in the NFL at this point. This is not somebody that I expect the Eagles to move on from anytime soon. I think they'd be a little foolish. I know he's probably going to have the wolves howling for the next few years of like, oh, it's any day now he's going to get replaced, but I don't see that. And you're looking at a guy whose floor for rushing is 600 yards a season. I mean, I definitely want Jalen Hurts. Is there an argument that appeals to you at all for CJ Stroud in Dynasty?
I would think the only argument you could make is that he is a few years younger, so you're getting that youth back. but it's not like Jalen Hertz is old by any means for quarterback. And I know you can get a little concerned when you have a rushing quarterback, staying healthy and, the legs kind of giving out as they get older, but he's nowhere near that cliff right now. I don't feel like, and I love what Houston is doing. Don't get me wrong. Great story. They're turning around their franchise. They brought in Stephon Diggs. They got a great young core of wide receivers there. They brought in Joe Mixon to complement Pierce there, so they've got a solid running back room. Yeah, they're doing a lot of great things. Their defense is improving. Does their defense take another step where they don't have to rely on their offense quite so much? And I know you can make that argument for Philadelphia. They've always had a very solid defense, and that hasn't affected Jalen Hurts' fantasy value. So I don't think we should really take that into the equation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love as you said, the quarterbacks with the rushing floor. That is where the fantasy gold is at. We know that the Eagles, they got the tush push going on. When it gets to the goal line, they're going to give it to Jalen Hurts at the goal line as opposed to their running back. Now with Barkley there this year, that could change a little bit. I don't expect it to be, 100% all the way to Barkley, but maybe Barkley eats into a handful of those, but I don't see the Texans doing that for Stroud. I think they're going to want to protect him. They're going to give it to the running back they brought in the offseason, or use one of these big targets they have in the end zone. So yeah, I just don't see that rushing floor and touchdowns to come along with the rushing for CJ Stroud. I mean, don't get me wrong, love him. I would love to have him in Dynasty. It's not that I'm anti CJ Stroud. It's just been one season. I am expecting a little bit of regression this year, even with the weapons they added. I just don't know that he can sustain that level without that rushing floor. So give me Hertz over CJ Stroud every day of the week here, especially in Dynasty.
Yeah. I think this would be a much more compelling argument for Dynasty if we were evaluating CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love. Because to me, those guys are basically the same dude in Dynasty right now. They're both on up-and-coming, ascending teams, ascending offenses, arguably. You could make the case that, CJ Stroud will continue to go up a little bit. You said that he might crest here this season, but maybe long-term he still has. I certainly still think he has more upside than what he's shown altogether. I mean, it's just how much.
Yeah. Can I ask just another quarterback that came to mind? Would you, and someone that doesn't have a big rushing floor, would you rather take CJ Stroud or like Joe Burrow?
The only reason I would say CJ Stroud is because of Joe Burrow's injury history and the consideration that maybe eventually that catches up to him a little bit. And Joe Burrow, again, a couple of years on CJ Stroud. So I would take CJ Stroud barely, but it's not a decisive thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like those two should be more closely together in ADP rather than these two, but yeah, I feel like we're on the same page for this one. So Jake, why don't you pick the next pair here we'll talk about? Feel free to pick anywhere on this list.
Happy to do it. I actually am going to stick with quarterbacks here just for a moment. And we're going to talk what's maybe a little gross for some people, but you put this one on here, and Dak Prescott versus Brock Purdy is arguably the most interesting one on this list, frankly, that I want to discuss, because in Dynasty, especially in Superflex, I know that we all get caught up in, obviously quarterback is king, but you want to have the elite guys, right? You want to have the top of the heap, but there is something to be said for getting depth at the quarterback position or reliability at the quarterback position. And I think one of these guys presents some sort of reliability, and the other one is kind of a big question mark, but frankly, I'm not sure which you think is which. I have a very clear idea of which of these guys is the stable one and which of them seems to be more of a question mark. But before I say that, I do want to throw it to you. And before I even throw it to you, I do want to say hello to Albert, who just joined us in the chat. Hello to you,
Albert.
Thanks
for joining us.
Hit us up with any questions that you might have in the chat, by the way, Albert. But Dustin, which of these guys, A, would you rather have, and B, presents the more stable option for you?
Ooh, such a loaded question. Both of them. So just for reference for people listening, Dak is currently going off the board as QB 14 and Brock Purdy at QB 15, 37th and 44th off the board respectively. So you're looking at early 4th round picks. Which would I rather have? God, that's such a tough question. I mean, this one really is tough, and that's why I put it on there. I think I would actually lean towards Dak on this one, but it's not a super strong feeling either way. I mean, I would take both of them as my QB2 on a squad for sure. But there's just something about Dak. I love CeeDee Lamb. He's taking that step forward. You got Jake the Snake Ferguson there, who's turning out to be a quality tight end, which we know Dak loves his tight ends all the way back to the ancient one, Joe Witten there. I don't know. And I feel like especially for this year, Dallas really didn't do a lot to address the running back room. So
that's an understatement, my man.
So just by that fact alone, I feel like they're going to be throwing the ball more because they can't rely on their running game as much as they have in previous, over the last 8 seasons, going back to when they drafted Zeke. So give me Dak Prescott. I mean, I love the 49ers offense. I mean, you got great talent there. You got CMC, you got Kittle, you got Debo, you got Ayuk, you got Pearsall that they just drafted. I mean, they've got all this talent, but I don't know. Just it edges just a little bit towards Dak for me.
I'm glad that I left it so open-ended. I'm sure not forced at all, because I do look at the other side of this, and I actually see more reliability in Dynasty for Brock Purdy right now. This time last year, I would not have said that. I would have not come close to saying that. I was still hoping that Trey Lance could be a thing at this time last year. Now Trey Lance is backing up Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott at 30 years old has those same tinges at this stage of like a really respectable high-end Jay Cutler type of like, I don't think Dak Prescott is the solution for Dallas. You can ask almost any Dallas fan about that. You can ask almost any Philadelphia fan. I think, honestly, the only thing they agree on is probably that Dak Prescott is not the future of this franchise. Brock Purdy, on the other hand, like, I think they just found their solution, or a good enough solution for a few years, because Shanahan just needs a guy who's like, all right, I got my offense. I just need you to run this offense. I'm going to build the crew around you. And we saw them continue to do that in this year's draft, adding Ricky Pearsall, adding some of these guys later on. So they're already planning for that phase of like, all right, we can't keep Debo and George and Brandon Ayuk around together forever, but they already have the future laid out around him, around Brock Purdy. He was an incredibly efficient guy last year. I don't know that that's Brock Purdy's talent. It's probably just, a lot to do with the Shanahan offense, but I will take the stability of Purdy plus Shanahan, which I think is going to be a thing for at least a few years. Brock Purdy's younger. Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott never had his injury that kind of zapped him of a lot of his rushing upside, I'd probably have a different version of this answer. But for me, it is Brock Purdy right now.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me pause with Brock Purdy is you have the best running back in the league, and yes, he's starting to get up there in age, but they do have CMC, and they have a very, very, very good defense. So I feel like their defense will be able to shut down opposing offenses, and then your offense isn't forced to have to throw the ball or make big plays because you're already playing from a position of a favorite where you're winning, and you can run the ball and kind of just chew that clock up. So that's the one thing from a fantasy perspective that just, like I said, gives me a little bit of a pause with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Dak will throw it more. And if we're talking about redraft this year, I will take Dak Prescott, because he's just going to have to throw it, 800 times. this year. So I'm completely fine with that. But yeah, for Dynasty, I'll switch it out with Brock Purdy. This is the type of episode that makes me want to make so many beer bets, and we really can't because we're not going to have an end result soon enough for them. But in lieu of that,
we can. I mean, if something really tickles your fancy, Jake, let's make something. Let's make some magic happen.
Let's make a 4-year beer bet. Let's make a retirement aged beer bet. Let's not do that. But who do you want to talk about next? Anybody else sticking out here for you?
All right, we're gonna move on here. Where do I want to go? Let's move on to running back here. Let's go with brought him up earlier, Mr. Saquon Barkley going back to the Eagles, or Mr. my drinking buddy from last year, Devon Achane. Currently RB7 and RB8, going 32nd and 35th off the board. Late third rounders, both of them. Now, Jake, this will probably surprise you. I think I'm going to go with Saquon here.
No shit.
Maybe this won't surprise you, and maybe you'll agree with me, but I love the offense in Philadelphia. I think they've been. I don't think they want to expose Jalen Herz as much as they had to last year, with all those pushes, runs, getting him banged up. Well, he's always going to run the ball, but that's more scrambling the pocket, maybe design runs, but not necessarily where he's getting bruised up the middle. They brought in Saquon. I mean, they didn't have to bring him in. They could have kept Swift on the team, and he did perfectly fine for him last year. He had a fine season. It was nothing flashy, but it was respectable. They bring in the crown jewel of free agents at the running back class of Saquon Barkley, and there's a reason they did that. So I feel like Saquon's going to have an excellent season. He's going to get some of those goal line rushes that we saw Jalen Herz had. And with Devonte Achane, Raheem Mostert's still there. They drafted another player very similar to what both Achane and Mostert have here in the draft, and spent decent draft capital. I believe it's the 4th round he was drafted in this year. So yeah, I just feel like that is going to be such the committee backfield. And while there's going to be weeks that they all pop off, and believe me, in best ball, I would love Achane, but for Dynasty, I just don't know that. I just don't know that I can trust him, because I feel like in that Miami backfield, it's going to be whoever has the hot hand or whoever is the healthiest at the time. Where with Saquon, I'm not really worried about anybody else behind him on that Philadelphia backfield.
And in that, we can agree. I have zero issues with the competition for Saquon Barkley with the Eagles. But it's interesting. You brought up DeAndre Swift, who I love, who I'm excited to draft this year with the Bears. But he was there with the Eagles last year. The thing that really has me a little concerned for Saquon Barkley is this guy has built a career out of getting like 80 targets a season minimum. So it's the targets and then it's the big plays. And oddly, I see Saquon and Achane as comparable in the way that they are big play dudes. Like they're going to bust off a long run. That's where most of their flair and flash is going to come from. And they might also fuck around and get some negative 5-yard plays. However, Saquon Barkley's going into his 7th year in the season. Obviously has dealt with his own injuries. And the Eagles themselves did not commit to getting targets for DeAndre Swift last year, who might be the best pass-catching running back in the NFL. Now, I know they have a different offensive coordinator. Kellen Moore is coming in. He spent some time in Dallas, and I hope that he's allowed to let Saquon do what he does from a target perspective. But I don't know that we're going to see those 80 target years out of him. He's getting up there. For Dynasty, just my background for how I play with strategy-wise, for high-end running backs, I play in a 2 to 3 year window, leaning closer to a 3-year window. And then, anybody beyond that is just like a year. It's like James Conner. Yeah, I got you for this year, buddy. But these guys are both in that high-end tier, so I do want to try to get 3 years out of it. You mentioned with the Dolphins, and they draft Jaylen Wright, who I'm a big fan of. but I see him as the replacement to Raheem Mostert, who's 32 years old this season, didn't break out until age 31. I don't know that that's a recipe for long-term sustained success. And I think that Wright is basically coming to take Mostert's job. And I don't think Achan's ever going to get Saquon's workload. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be 20 touches a game. They're probably going, all right, we really love you. We would like you to stay healthy. We'll give you, 12 touches a game. And we'll bring in this other guy, Jaylen Wright, to kind of help carry the load and do some of that. So I'm into Achan. I think the price is probably, would you say it's about the same? I mean, the startup obviously capital is, but if you're just looking to trade for one of these guys right now, do you think sending out a late first is going to get either one of them at this point?
That might get it done, depending on your league. Yeah. I mean, it'd be close, I feel like, but yeah, I think it could get that done. I don't know that personally I would pay for more than a first for them. Yeah, either one of them.
Because I wouldn't with Saquon. I wouldn't do that, but I think I might with Achan, which again, I think that's why that's my answer. I'd be more comfortable doing it with Achan than with Saquon.
Yeah, and I just want to look up one thing here real quick.
You look up that one thing. You tell me that one thing. Is that one thing?
Yeah, so, I mean, DeAndre Swift last year, he had 50. No, I was going back to Barkley not being, super involved in the passing game. Swift did have 49 targets, so I feel like 50 targets is doable, and I'm perfectly fine with that for running back. I mean, obviously, you want to have a running back that gets more than that. I mean, that's great. But I feel like that's more of a function of New York not having any talent at the wide receiver position than necessarily Saquon being an outstanding receiver. So if he gets 50 targets or 50 receptions, I'd be all for that. I think that's great.
Yeah, touchdown upside should be there more with Philly than with New York. I'll definitely give you that. I think it's just about the long-term aspect. I think you could be looking at guys who win you your league this year, but beyond this year, I think I want the chance at Achan.
Okay. All right, Jake. Choose the next pair.
I would love to choose the next pair. This one has me all excited. And I came in locked and loaded with my answer on this one. I don't know if you feel quite so locked and loaded, but let's talk about A.J. Brown versus Puka Nacua. You had noted on here how close all of these guys are, obviously. We're talking wide receiver 7 in A.J. Brown, wide receiver 8 in Puka Nacua. So it's really just, do you believe in the 1-year rookie breakout of Puka Nacua, record-setting year for a rookie receiver? Or do you believe in A.J. Brown and his sustained success more? And I believe in A.J. Brown and his sustained success more. I'm just going to rip that Band-Aid off. I would rather, even though A.J. Brown has a couple of extra years on than what Puka Nacua does at this stage, I look at it as A.J. Brown has been beating off. I said it. I said what I said. He's been beating off Devonte Smith for the last couple of years for targets. I was one of those guys where I was like, it's Brown and Smith. They're both basically going to be the same guy, coin flip as to who to draft, in your redraft leagues and this and that. And I think that was just a complete failure because Brown is the absolute stud, the dynamo there. Devonte Smith, very good player, but not up to A.J. Brown's caliber. Puka Nacua, I obviously see the upside. You'd be blind not to, but I don't know that I fully believe it. Do you?
Yeah, I'm right with you, Jake. I will take A.J. Brown every day of the weekend, twice on football Sundays. Wow. I love Puka. I love what he did. Obviously, record-setting rookie season. I just don't know that I trust this Rams offense, and more so Matt Stafford staying healthy for an entire season. You still got Cooper Kupp, who I know is getting a little bit older. They got Kyron Williams, who showed off really well. It seems like they want him to be the guy for them. I don't know. Something gives me hesitation with this offense. And I think it really does revolve around Matt Stafford. I mean, we've talked a lot about the Eagles so far on this podcast. So maybe this should have been our divisional breakdown of the Eagles this week. But I do love their offense. I mean, what's not to love? You got a top tier quarterback. You got a high flying offense. AJ Brown has proved it time and time again that he is the alpha. He gets the targets. We saw it last year where he started to be the squeaky wheel a little bit. What happened that next week? Just peppered with targets, and it just continued the rest of the season. So I don't see that formula changing for Philadelphia at all. So give me the guy that has done it for multiple years, and I feel like is going to for sure continue that trend.
Yeah, and Puka feels a little CJ Stroudish in how quickly we've anointed him in Dynasty, and I get it. But like in redraft, where the risk is much lower in this, I'm fine with these two guys being close in redraft and just saying, hey, if Matthew Stafford's back does hold up for the entire year and he's the quarterback, for the bulk of the season, fine. But I do think the Rams have a real big longevity problem at quarterback, and I don't know that it's going to be solved very easily for them. Jimmy G as their backup does not instill any confidence for me and for Puka Nacua. I don't know. It's a pass for me. Not pass entirely, obviously, but in this situation, AJ Brown versus Puka Nacua, it's very clear to me.
Yeah, and with Puka, I just wonder too if it's part of it with McVay and him being able to scheme him the right way and utilize his skills to the fullest. If he were on another team, would that happen? Hard to say. Maybe his talent is that good that he would just be an elite wide receiver regardless of where he is. I just don't know that with Puka, but we know we've seen that with AJ Brown.
True. Although I will say, to Puka's defense, I don't think Sean McVay's going anywhere. So as long as he has him there to scheme him up, should be hypothetically good there. But yes, we both agree with the AJ Brown over Puka side of this. Do you have another one you want to jump over to?
Yeah, let's jump over the tight ends here. We'll skip running backs for the time being. We'll get there. But I want to talk tight end a little bit here. And I want to start with two of the top 3 tight ends in Dynasty. We're talking Trey McBride as tight end 2 right now, or Brock Bowers, the rookie, going as tight end 3. I'm not going to lie. I was shocked to see both of them this high in the Dynasty rankings. Obviously, there's been a big shift with in the Dynasty landscape. We've got Kelsey getting older, Andrews getting older, Kittle's been injured. Like I get why maybe there's been this shift, but to see these two, I mean, McBride, he had a decent season last year, but it was by no means world beating where he won you fantasy championships. But I love his upside. Don't get me wrong. I love Trey McBride. He's young. He's got all the skills available to him. Brock Bowers, rookie coming in, just drafted in the first round by Las Vegas. If I'm going to take one here, I think I will lean towards Trey McBride. I just don't know what the Raiders are doing on offense right now. They drafted a very highly regarded tight end last year in the draft in Mayer. RIP to my Mayer shares for right now. And maybe they'll have 2 tight end sets, and maybe Brock Bowers will be more of a split out opposite Devonte Adams and whoever else they have there, Jacoby Myers. Maybe he'll work opposite of those guys. I don't know what their plan is, but seeing that he's already been anointed as number 3, I've been burned. Coming in on the rookies so hot. See later in our show, Kyle Pitts. So give me Trey McBride, but I don't know that I'm super confident for Dynasty for either of these long-term, having them so high.
It's every year. It's every year now that the incoming rookie class has somebody who stands out as the next big thing. And, you don't want to miss him now because it's the cheapest they'll ever be. So, yes, Kyle Pitts. Absolutely. Dalton Kincaid, I think you could throw into the same bucket. Maybe not. He wasn't quite as hyped as Brock Bowers. I understand the appeal of Brock Bowers. I really do.
Well, and I've heard of,
very hard. Yeah.
He's been in my, universe of my sphere of influence, for a couple years now. I've been hearing about Brock Bowers coming. Basically, as soon as Kyle Pitts was drafted, like, oh, this guy Brock Bowers, he's going to be even better, or at least as good as Kyle Pitts, and it's like high praise. So, but I've been burned.
Yeah, this is hard for me because I love Trey McBride. I feel like I was somewhat early on the Trey McBride hype train, and I will
give you that
with Trey McBride being ranked above Travis Kelce in Dynasty. I can actually get myself there. Like, yeah, totally fine.
For Dynasty,
same with Brock Bowers. I think both of those two should be ranked above Travis Kelce in Dynasty, who is probably going to retire, after 2025. And who knows what we see in between then and now. Brock Bowers, the Raiders do not instill confidence. The Raiders themselves do not instill confidence to say, we have another generational tight end in Brock Bowers, who's not just a tight end. He's actually secretly all these other things. Great. Will the Raiders unlock that? Will they utilize him in a way that is world-shattering? If so, great. He should just be probably, fucking close to tight end 1 anyways and call it a day, if that's true. But when I look at the supposed versatility of Brock Bowers in college and go, okay, great. Do the Raiders have the actual game plan for him? I don't know. That's too much for me to just trust. It's just too much. We get caught up in rational coaching all the time and the fallacy of it. I don't think I'm ready to do that with Brock Bowers. You mentioned, like, getting hurt in the past. I don't want to get hurt again. I feel like I know what we have in Trey McBride, who may not be a generational tight end. He may not be the most versatile dude. But if he goes on to have 6 years of Zach Ertz-esque fantasy value, fucking awesome. I'm sold. Yeah. And I will lock him into my lineup and not think twice about it. Yeah.
Yep. Same. So it sounds like we're on the same page here, Jake.
We are.
Who's next?
All right.
Who do you got next?
I don't know that we're going to be on the same page here. I kind of couldn't believe you put this one in here. I almost thought it was just to get my goat a little bit, but I want to talk about it because this is a Dynasty-centered podcast, and I think these two names get real interesting for Dynasty. But Keenan Allen or Calvin Ridley, both guys who obviously changed over the offseason. Keenan Allen valued at wide receiver 43, Calvin Ridley at wide receiver 44. You know that I'm anti-Calvin Ridley. I've been anti-Calvin Ridley for a while. He's also not Puka Nakua's, age or anything. It's not like he's so much younger where you just go, oh, Calvin Ridley, obviously, compared to old man Keenan Allen. Calvin Ridley's 29 already, going to turn 30 well before December. So, I think it's much closer than people want to admit. And I think people write off Keenan Allen a little bit because of his age. And I don't know that. I guess they do because they're valued this close in the startup. But going back to the trade value, like if you sent the exact same trade offer for Keenan Allen versus Calvin Ridley, I guarantee the person would accept the trade offer for Keenan Allen before they'd accept it for Calvin Ridley because he's younger. I want more for Calvin Ridley. So what do you think? Are we crazy for this? Am I crazy for this? What do you think?
No, I not at all. And I think personally, I would rather have Keenan Allen on my team. While maybe he won't have those big blow up games that'll win you a week anymore, he's still going to be a very consistent wide receiver. And I know he's only with the Bears right now for this next season. He's on the 1-year deal. So he could be moving on after the season. and who knows where he would land, and that could, change things drastically. But I am going to work under the assumption that the Bears will probably try to extend him for another year or two after this, to try to keep those weapons around their young quarterback, especially a quarterback that's on a rookie contract. So they have the money to be able to spend. So give me Keenan Allen. He's been so undervalued for so many years. I think he's going to be a great underneath safety blanket for Caleb Williams, for a rookie quarterback. Don't get me wrong, Calvin Ridley's got the strong arm. Will Levis there, so maybe they can make some magic happen down the field while DeAndre Hopkins plays the underneath role there in Tennessee. But I still think they're going to be more of a run-oriented offense than what the Bears are going to be. So I will take the volume with Keenan Allen over the potential boom games you're going to get from Calvin Ridley. And yeah, the reason I threw this on here was because they are very polarizing, but as you pointed out, they're much closer in age than you would expect. So that's why I found this super interesting.
Yeah, especially in the terms of age within the idea of a cliff that comes up for wide receivers. Keenan Allen hypothetically should have hit that cliff last year, and yet he only played, I just looked this up now, I still kind of can't believe it. He finished as wide receiver 8, and he only played 13 games last year. Keenan Allen didn't lose shit. He hasn't lost shit. I don't expect that he will take a massive step back, because I do expect Caleb Williams just to sling it all season long. I think they'll be a much more pass-heavy team. With Calvin Ridley, chance for a little bit of a news update here. The Titans did sign Tyler Boyd, by the way, who's been kind of the last hangout free agency guy that I still can't believe, frankly, the Steelers didn't pick up. But they have him. So now we also have the idea who actually is the X receiver in this offense. I don't know. Is it actually going to be Calvin Ridley? Now they have Tyler Boyd. Should just be in the slot, I would suppose. Traylon Burks is still technically hanging around there. I don't.
Yeah, I guess
really much of anything. I just don't. And Calvin Ridley's inconsistency is so frustrating. Even in Dynasty, I'm going to say, hopefully I get 2 more years out of Keenan Allen. If I can get 2 more years out of him, well worth it. And Calvin Ridley's go, frustrate somebody else in Dynasty.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we are definitely on the same wavelength on that one, Jake. Woo! How are we doing with time? We got time for at least a couple more here.
Yeah, we can squeeze in a couple here. What do you want to go to?
So we haven't talked running backs at all here. So let's dive into the running back
one, but not enough. Not enough. Yeah.
Okay, true. You're right. So I'm going to go back. Let's talk the ageless wonder of Derrick Henry, currently going off the board at RB22. And I thought this was interesting, David Montgomery at RB23.
Yeah.
I was shocked to see these two right next to each other in ADP. And I get this is Dynasty, and I get Derrick Henry's old. I'm using quotations because, I'm older than he is.
Sure.
But I don't think he's human. He is built differently. And I love the situation he's in with Baltimore there. They are a team that loves to run the ball. We've seen it year after year after year. Doesn't matter who they have in that backfield, they're going to run the ball. And while David Montgomery is plenty fantasy relevant, but you do have Jahmyr Gibbs out in front of him. And when Montgomery was out for that short stint last year, you really saw Gibbs take control. And there was really that shift of Gibbs kind of getting more of that workload than Montgomery. So while Montgomery, he'll still be fantasy relevant, he'll still have his weeks, but from what we've seen over the last couple of years out of him, I'm not expecting that going into this season. And give me Derrick Henry until he proves me otherwise and he shows that he's lost a step. I think he's just going to be bowling people over, giving those stiff arms and scoring touchdowns with an offense that knows how to utilize a running back.
I I want to kiss you on the mouth after all of that
Don't tease.
effusiveness for Derrick Henry. I mentioned before, like when I'm in Dynasty with running backs outside of the top tier of guys for Dynasty, I treat them as it's like a 1 year. It's like a redraft position for me. Derrick Henry, as much as I love him, in Dynasty is no longer in that top tier. So he is treated on the 1 year basis. Same with David Montgomery here. And just to give you a little sneak peek, I was fixing around with my post NFL draft running back rankings for redraft. And I had Derrick Henry at number 7 on the year. That's how much I believe in him with the Ravens for just this year. David Montgomery did not crack my top 15, but Jahmyr Gibbs is sitting at number 3 because I also agree with you in the way that I think there was a massive shift towards about the half point of last year in Detroit. David Montgomery, not saying that he's going to be worthless by any means, and might even be a decent trade target in your dynasty league, depending on how people start to view him and if people are going too far in the other direction with him. But again, on a 1 year basis, which is how I'm evaluating these guys, even in dynasty, it's Derrick Henry. And as the kids say, it ain't close.
All right, Jake, why don't you hit us with one last one here?
Beautiful. I want to talk about, selfishly, trade that I did somewhat recently in a dynasty league. So let's talk about Kyle Pitts. Let's talk about TJ Hockenson. I can't let us get out of this podcast without talking about them, since you even teased Kyle Pitts earlier on. So Kyle versus TJ. We've got Kyle Pitts, tight end 6, TJ Hockenson, tight end 7. I don't have any issues with those rankings, really, in Dynasty, other than to give away my answer, I would flip them. I would put TJ Hockenson at tight end 6, and I would put Kyle Pitts at tight end 7. So, yes, my answer is TJ Hockenson, even though he's older, even though he's coming off of an injury. So, for this year, you're probably going to have to count him out for a few games. I don't know. I mean, we haven't gotten any firm answer on that, but that's just my projection. All of that said, when Arthur Smith leaves town, does the unicorn Kyle Pitts come back out of the box and just look like his rookie season self? I don't know that I'm really that convinced about it necessarily. So I trust TJ Hockenson, even with the new quarterback, because that's the deal. TJ's quarterback now goes over to play with Kyle Pitts, but I'm not just going to transfer all of that magic on over. But are you feeling somewhat? Are you back in on Kyle Pitts? I guess is how I should ask that.
Well, and I think to your point too, Jake, you're talking about TJ Hockenson coming off an injury, Kirk Cousins coming off of his own major injury. He's 36 years old. It's not like he's young and had this injury. So to come back, and I know he's no Aaron Rodgers where, he can come back out of nowhere, in season, possibly from an Achilles tear.
Well,
but
he hasn't listened to enough Dolphins fucking, and that's on him. Frankly, that's on him. The method is out there. Kirk just didn't want to accept it. But yes,
this is fair. This is fair. So, there are questions around the quarterback, and we don't know what's going to happen there because they drafted a rookie quarterback as well in the first round. So that situation is very scary as far as who's going to be chucking the ball to Kyle Pitts. But I think I will lean with you, Jake, here and give me TJ Hockenson, even in Dynasty. Even if you're going to miss a handful of games from this season, I think even when he does return, I just love what they have on that offense. They've got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, a solid number 3 receiver. You've got Aaron Jones coming
in free agency, but the rest of your
don't
points
make me. Well, don't make me sound stupid, Jake. God,
I'm trying to help.
But you got Aaron Jones coming over in free agency, so they have a lot of offensive weapons for the new rookie quarterback here, which is only going to help TJ Hockenson, I feel like, become more open and could be a very good safety blanket for this rookie quarterback. I don't know. we know what we got with the Vikings offense. We've seen them run their offense for a number of years now. I don't know. I just don't, until I see it in Atlanta, I just don't know that I could trust Kyle Pitts. Because let's be honest, I've been burned multiple times by him, where TJ Hockenson has never let me down yet. So I'm going to stay with the guy I know, and I'm going to say TJ Hockenson.
I love it. I agree with everything you said, by the way. But Joey, right? By the way, love to see you in here, Joey. Joey says, I only have the recordings of porpoises doing hand stuff. That's the more PG version of the Dolphins, fucking Joey. You're going to have to pay extra. I think the membership fee is like an extra $5 a month. And then you get full range of the Dolphin stuff. So pay for
and
that.
Joey, I just want to say that a porpoise is not a dolphin. If you go back and watch Ace Ventura, you can find out exactly what the differences are between a porpoise and your dolphin.
I think he's saying he can't afford the Dolphins doing it, Dustin. That's the problem. He can only afford the porpoises here.
Okay,
he doesn't have that $1 million contract over in New York like Aaron does. But I do, just one final thought about Kyle Pitts is like, I know that we're all expecting Kirk Cousins goes over, Arthur Smith leaves, and now everybody gets fixed right away. Bijan Robinson gets fixed. Drake London gets fixed. Kyle Pitts gets fixed. Could they all get fixed in the same season? Sure, yeah, they sure could. Hypothetically, I think it's a pretty strong bet to make when looking in the face of a guy who finished, tight end 5, tight end 2, tight end 4 in his last 3 healthy seasons. And again, I know he's coming off of an injury, but I don't expect TJ Hockenson. TJ Hockenson is not like I need to go 80 yards downfield. Again, he's a more traditional Zach Ertz style of tight end. I'm dropping Zach Ertz names probably far too often in this podcast, but that's okay. Got to live with it. All right. Do you want to squeeze in one more, or do you want to hit the buzzer here?
Well, Jake, if there's one more you really want to talk about, go ahead and lay it on me.
Really quickly. You said we didn't talk about certain players enough. It would be weird if we left this podcast without at least a little bit of a homer tint to our dynasty take. So we've got, I couldn't believe this actually. So Devonte Adams versus Jaden Reed in terms of dynasty right now. So Devonte Adams, wide receiver 29, Jaden Reed, wide receiver 30. If I'm speculating here, Devonte Adams is old. Jaden Reed is in a busy depth chart.
Young,
and I think that's why we see this. Right? But Jaden Reed, again, he's in a busy depth chart, but not one that was added to by the Packers. So Jaden Reed is contending only with the health of his teammates in terms of competition going forward. Because Christian Watson, if he gets all of his hamstring shit fixed by the specialists, then all right, he's actual competition. Luke Musgrave comes back and stays healthy, then he's competition. But otherwise, it's exactly as we left it, except for that amazing receiving threat out of the backfield is now in Minnesota. So I say it's Jaden Reed here. I might be taking crazy pills. Maybe I'm giving Keenan Allen too much credit and Devonte Adams not enough. Do you feel that way?
You know what? I think I'm going to agree with you. It's pretty close though for me. It's hard for me to give up on a guy, not give up, but discount a guy like Devonte Adams. Because we've seen it. I mean, us as Packer fans, we saw it up close and personal for so many years, how good he is. Getting back to what we were talking about earlier with Brock Bowers, though, I don't know if I can trust this offense. And we saw Devonte Adams disappear at times last year, or he would have like 1 catch or 2 catches. I mean, that's not what you're expecting from, an elite wide receiver. And I know last year he was still being drafted very high. So maybe ADP has corrected itself this year based on, last year's performance, but I still just don't know that I trust him. And I shouldn't say trust him, trust that offense to give us the fantasy production that we're going to be looking for. So give me Jaden Reed here. I said it's close, but give me Jaden Reed only because I feel like this is an ascending offense. You got a lot of young talent that's working together. Jordan Love, another year as a starter. I'll take this chemistry that's blooming in front of our faces and hope that Jaden Reed really establishes himself as the number one wide receiver in Green Bay.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I'll just put a fine point on it, and then we can leave this thing alone and get out of here. But Devonte Adams had as many weeks in the top 12 as he did outside of the top 60 last year in fantasy. That's
what's
brutal.
concerning.
And maybe it's an anomaly. Maybe it is. He did still finish as a fringe wide receiver 1 last year, I believe, in half PPR, but it's because he had those massive boom weeks to really bolster that and just stayed healthy and played basically every week. So, yeah, I love you, Devonte. I really do. But I am turning my attention toward Jaden Reed, who is my favorite out of the Packers depth chart at the moment for Dynasty.
Yeah, same as well. All right. Any final thoughts here before we sign off for the evening, Jake?
Go make some trades. We mentioned it at the top of the episode, but go make some trades in your Dynasty leagues. Hopefully the stuff that we talked about tonight helps you out a little bit in doing that. But if you have actual trade questions that you're pondering, send them over to either of us, to the show at Drinking Fantasy, and we'll help you through it.
That's right. And then, as always, folks, give us a rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You see us go live. You can join us in the chat, just like our good friend Joey did tonight. We'll answer any questions that you have live in chat, so we can answer these questions for you instead of having to wait for us to check our DMs. And with that, we'll be back next week. We're going to be starting our divisional breakdown series, having some very fun guests joining us, talking through their favorite teams, bringing out the homer and everybody here for the next set of weeks. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I really look forward to these episodes. This is where we really start digging deep into team by team analysis for fantasy goodness. So stay tuned for that starting next week, folks. And as always, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.